Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Paranormal Karen. My guest today, first of all, I cannot believe that this is the first time he's been on because I thought he was on in my first season. Now, you've heard him on the New Year's predictions episodes, and he is the master of coining the phrase. And this year, you sent me so many emails and comments about how much you loved him. Please welcome psychic medium and all-around awesome guy, Paul Jacek. Paul, how are you?
Oh, Karen, hello. I'm good. I'm good as we navigate this exciting time.
Yes.
It's
yes.
Yeah.
And you're coming out. This is the last week of February that we're in right now. But I immediately was telling you that everything seems to have gotten dark. I'm getting dark cases. I'm finding out people's dark travelers. I have someone that emailed me that they think they have I don't know how she said it, so I'm not going to say it too much. She didn't sound like she had a dark traveler, but she was trying to contact something. I don't know. Paul, what's your feeling on all the weird darkness that's all of a sudden here? Not dangerous. I'm not afraid, but there's something going on.
There is. And what it is, here's my take is, as people start this path, and it is marvelous. It's really, as we move through this life existence, and it's not the only one. So everyone, don't worry if you didn't catch it this time, you'll be back. But in order for there to be light, there must be darkness. There must be a contrast. And so what I'm seeing, especially since, as we went into the age of Aquarius, and now I'm sounding really woo-woo, but
we're a woo-woo podcast.
We are. Well, for me, it has to be practical. So within the energetic soup that we're swimming in, there has been so much more light poured in. Because as we stepped into the age of Aquarius, as I was telling quite a few of my clients and folks, we're witnessing, and it's a good thing, the death of white male supremacy.
Yes.
That bullying, nasty, just because I said so, let me mansplain it to you, honey, simply will not be tolerated. There's no energy underneath it any longer. This new fresher energy, people are calling it the return to the divine feminine. I don't know that it's a return. I think it's a balancing out finally.
Yeah. I have a question for you quick before.
Sure.
I'm not much, I get some astrology, but what is your sign?
I am a double Cancer, meaning a Cancer sun, Cancer moon, Virgo rising, meaning I'm moody and picky.
Wow, that is a lot of Cancer. Tell me about Aquarius. I'm a Leo, and a real true Aquarius is usually a little bit of a resistance with me, except for Jessa Reed, but she's right on the cusp. So I don't know that she's the Aquarian I get along with. As we go in the Aquarian age, it's about being different. It's about being independent. Our Aquarius is skeptical.
Aquarians are the the standard carriers. They may be the ones that'll save the planet. They're out front with that giant banner going, this is what we're doing, but don't confuse them with detail.
Ah, okay. So they're all right, got it. Okay.
Hand that off to a Virgo.
And I'm the Leo. I will pull everyone along. I'm the leader.
Yes. So. Well, a leader, and the moon in Leo is so interesting because Cancer, which is just ahead in the astrological calendar, the moon governs Cancer. Cancer is the sign of the psychic and the alcoholic because it deals with feelings. Cancers just feel all of it. I would never, in my experience, met a Cancer who wasn't deeply empathic. Leo's
shell on the outside, gooey on the inside, shell on the
inside. You bet. And never let anything go. I've never let anything go that didn't have claw marks on
it. And how are your knees? That's what I learned, that grudges are about, you have bad knees if you hold grudges.
Indeed. So my knees are pretty good, thank God. So back to, it's interesting about Leos and this shift into what we're perceiving as this rise of darkness. It's not.
Okay.
It is, as there's been more light poured in, of course, we're going to see the dark areas.
Okay.
And go ahead.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Two things, because I feel like, and a sort of my interpretation of that, and also I should have set this up better with the question I had for you before we started the call, which is the veil is gone. We know that the veil is
That's
gone,
correct.
so everything is right here. So you're saying we're seeing this darkness more because the veil is gone.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay.
It is. And so therefore, people ask me frequently, there's still kind of a buzz about, oh my God, do you talk to the dead? And I said, don't you?
Yeah.
Because just because people are dead doesn't make them interesting.
Right.
They just happen to be the non-physical. And that's what this time is now people are able to perceive walking into a room going, oh, what's going on in here?
Right.
And so it is very natural with so much light. People begin to wince from the bright light. If you step out into the bright sunshine, it's a little too much. So darkness and or darker entities, dark travelers, are feeling a little panic. So they're holding on a little harder. So what this is calling us to is our spiritual strength. What is your sacred? What do you believe in? Because now it's let go or be dragged, children. I mean, really.
Yes. Now I have to tell you, first of all, if you don't know Paul, you've already heard him coin two phrases that are beautiful: spiritual soup. I love soup. And also you had another one for 2021. It was what owns you?
Oh my goodness, I can't remember now.
It was something like that. It was like, what owns you? Like, does alcohol own you? Does codependency
own
you?
What are you under the influence of?
What are you under the influence of? Yes, because you were so funny last year. You said the saying for 2020 is going to be let go or be dragged. And then you came right on New Year's and you go, I think we got dragged.
Yeah. I mean, if you're listening to this, good on you. Yeah. Because you made it through, because and especially with the pandemic. And I had a client who, bless her heart, she was so tender. And she said, is it ever going to get better? And I said, you tell me.
Yeah. You know what? I can't, I think that is the dragged part. Cause here's the thing. We have to just find new ways to make it better. That it's not, you know what I mean? Like everyone wants to go back. I don't think we can go back, but I think we can make it better a new way, right?
Well, exactly. Because people go, when is it going to get back to normal? And I said, I don't know that normal was that, all that. This way, there's been so much commentary about, oh, I'm a co-creator. Really? How you doing? Because
that got changed. Remember when we were manifesting everything and then the virus hit and then everyone's like, I didn't do it. I wasn't.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Well, and then that's why within that idea of, if you are who you say you are, I'm seeing this with other people that work in our business. It's very easy to not, I wanted to say slack off, but we must get our spiritual chest of drawers in order.
Again, chest of drawers, spiritual chest of drawers. I'm keeping track of all of these, Paul. They're so entertaining. Yes, and also, go ahead. I have a whole nother question for you about the. Go ahead, and continue.
Okay. So within that, what I've noticed since the pandemic, since we had to adjust, we had to pivot. That's another favorite phrase I'm hearing. I've had to pivot into doing. We're not doing so many, or I'm not doing so many face-to-face readings any longer. And I do miss that part. But what has happened for me is in these quote unquote remote readings, my accuracy has jacked up. Why? Because I don't have to look across the table and see if you're ready for it.
Paul, exactly. Not only that, and this is why I love phone readings better. And some people insist on coming in person, and I finally got the guts to say no. But and I started saying no to FaceTime because I had a reading where the woman was on FaceTime and it was in her car and she's moving it around and it's too hot and I have to turn the car on. And I was like, she wasn't listening, and then it threw me off. I am telling you, phone readings, no one there to make faces or body language, are the best.
The best, because now my connection is so much clearer. And being a baby medium, and I'm working with it. It's a different energy. It's and I've had some success, but the journey for me around that is because I'm not interested. I used to be fascinated with Uri Geller.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, listen, yes, yes.
Here comes the cops.
Indeed. But then I thought, well, now after you've bent all these spoons, you have a silverware drawer full of bent spoons.
Exactly.
So,
but you know what?
so,
I have to tell you, I have to stop you.
Go ahead.
I told Ryan Singer I wanted to learn to bend spoons with him. And then I bought like a box of spoons. And I was like, that's really optimistic. Maybe we only need one. That's
well, because of our belief in more is better.
Yes. Well, I thought we're going to bend 30 spoons, Ryan. I haven't told him that yet, but I was like, we're not going to bend 30. If we bend one, the night is over.
Yeah. That's pretty much. Yeah. So back into this idea of the darkness. In one, humanity is fascinated with the darkness. We love to stare into it.
Mm-hmm.
So within that, therefore, because of the law of the universe, therefore, what you pay attention to increases. So I am seeing, it's interesting through the pandemic, I've seen a lot of people in this uncertain time return to either the religion that they were raised with, or they have chosen a religion. And I think that's interesting in the fact that we're looking for comfort.
That's interesting. I have not heard anyone. I haven't heard that theme, but it might be going on. Anyways, that is interesting that you would choose a religion right now.
A friend of mine she went through a phase of, she was raised in the Roman Catholic Church. In fact, I believe she graduated from a Roman Catholic high school. When she got married, however, she married a Jew. So she then went to do the classes to convert, and then they both lost interest. And basically, she became agnostic or atheist. And now, 20 years later, I was so surprised when we were talking, and she said, why can't I have Mass? And I thought, and her mother's older. I thought, oh, that's nice. She's taking her mother to Mass. She goes, oh, no, I rededicated myself to the Catholic Church.
See, okay, now I'm really going to offend some people, and I don't mean to, but that's a strange move to me. And of course, it's my perspective, and she's, probably a lovely person making decisions, but I would have gone with Judaism.
Well, but here's what's interesting. Because we sort of have been shaken to our very core, we're going back to what was first comforting. So since that was sort of, the Pope used to say, give me a child to the age of 7, they'll be a Catholic for life.
That is a scary thing. And Catholics, if you're happy, good for you. But I have so many people that will not let go of the idea of pain and feeling guilty is getting you somewhere. And that's the Catholic Church. That's how they are. They've all become the devil card. They're hanging on to the guilt and the this and that.
Exactly, because I sort of publicize the fact that I'm sort of a Buddhist, Episcopal, Jewish Wiccan.
Yes, exactly. See, but I love that. There are certain things from all religions that are great, and then you find things that cross over, and you're like, well, wow, everybody's got the archangels or whatever you're finding. But that feels like a surrender that she went back to the Catholic Church.
I think it was because it was uncomplicated.
Okay, you got better words than me today. You're in charge of words today, Paul.
Because she just knows how it runs.
Okay, that makes sense. But so now let's take two topics and meld them together.
All right.
Because a couple of things, and we're talking about we're in the end of January, so maybe something's going to happen between February and the time this comes out, the end of February. And this is actually connected to her and going back to what she knows, is I was really expecting a big, the Capitol was a big event, but I really thought there was much more going to happen. And I feel like we jumped on a timeline where it didn't, but that anger is still there. Like I almost wish this had all popped at once and it was done with and we were picking up, because I thought I was going to lose this feeling of waiting for the other shoe to drop, and I haven't. And now it seems like it's just spread out. Like, I don't know, whatever's going on in Washington, and those guards got to stay there, and probably all around here, everywhere. Capitals are probably very nervous and going to have to keep up, protection. But that, and then going back to church like that, I feel like we're white knuckling getting into the age of Aquarius. We're still holding on so tightly, we're not going.
You're exactly right.
That makes me sad.
I think we talked about it there, long before any of this, those wise astrologer folks. There were 2 dates that seemed to be, and I'm not an astrologer, I just work with a bunch of them. There were 2 dates in this calendar, January 6th, and then the window from the 17th to the 21st, that were really volatile. Mm-hmm. And what I picked up and doing a little journaling and thought is I wondered, I was pretty sure there was going to be a mess around the inauguration.
Me too.
And what I was surprised about, and the information I sort of received, is the worldwide response to what happened on the 6th. I don't know if we'll ever know the legion. I'll get real dramatic. The Legion of Light and the enormous amount of prayers worldwide that smoothed that stuff down.
Probably, because if the United States falls, even if they hate us, we're always pretty secure.
Well, and here's what's interesting. These people because of fear, when you create from fear, it just creates itself again. Mm. And so therefore, these people who are shrieking about being a patriot or screaming about this being a Christian nation, first of all, it comes from ignorance. And that's not a bad word. It means absence of fact. Yeah. So the United States, the democratic experiment, is so fascinating to me because we were not a Christian nation. We left that open. You may believe whatever you'd like to believe here, and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights allow that. You could be a Buddhist, Episcopal, Jewish, Wiccan, short of turning a cat inside out on the corner square for your religious reasons.
Yes.
We'll kind of go along with you. That being said, as people rally against, I want to say, you're not even making sense.
I don't know why you make me laugh, Paul, but you always make me laugh. I can just see you looking at you're not making any sense.
That's right. I was a Manny for a while. I want to take most of the nation and go, absolutely not. This behavior is unacceptable and un-American. And all of you go to the naughty spot. It's Arkansas. All of you. Move along. Move along. Uncle Paul will tell you when rest time is over, but we're not having this.
We're not having this. That's what I love. I know. So what in your theory, do you have any, I'm a little bit stunned at the what now? I'm not sure.
Well, what has dropped to is especially all of this prattle about being a co-creator. And my question is, how's that going? So how's that going? Because it microcosm, macrocosm, how the world has always been a mess between the Peloponnesian War, and then we had that whole Roman problem. The world has always been in crisis, but how we can change the world is how are you doing at your address?
Yes. How are you doing at your, why haven't you written a book? This is hysterical. How are you doing at your address?
Yeah. How are things there? Because you can't change the world, and people have tried, the whole act as if, which is a nice place to start. But if you can't change the world unless you've changed yourself.
Right.
So even within your own family, this adjustment, and once again, this stuff isn't easy. If it were, there wouldn't be so many people in recovery.
Yeah, and you know what else? You know what was easy? And I don't mean this in a. First of all, we're all probably half of our knowledge is somewhat laced in a conspiracy. And I know that sounds weird, but it's like, I don't I don't blame, like, to me, what the QAnon people believed sounded crazy, but they just interviewed this woman and she said, she was a middle class, Midwestern woman that is now out of QAnon. And she was sort of saying, well, when people were telling me this, it all made sense. And it's sort of based on the fact that she believed, if you work hard, you'll do fine. Or, you work hard, you pay your bills, everybody's going to be fine. And I don't know if I want to, and she couldn't, and that's not true. That's not true.
No,
you do your best, and and hopefully it works out. But this, ask a coal miner or somebody like that. That's like, hey, I worked all my life, and now you're saying I don't do this anymore. That's not all these things we're taught to believe. And she was like, it all made sense that there was some evil cabal that was holding me back. So I'm going to ask a question, and then we're going to take a break. And Paul, you can answer it on the other side. What? Your friend that went back to the Catholic Church, okay, and everyone can get mad at me, is that a move backwards? Now, hold on, folks. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, I only bring you the best in readers and healers, and that's why I'm here to talk about Paul Jacek. Paul was the guy you all went nuts for on the New Year's prediction show, as you should. He was fantastic. He's one of my favorite people, and not only is he a reader, he's also an entertainer, so when you book with him, you're in for some fun as well. He's not only accurate, he's one of the most compassionate human beings I've ever met, which means he can tell you how it is without scarring you for life. We all know those readers that blurt stuff out or try to work out their own shadow side on us. That's not Paul. Paul is going to give you the information you need and have you walking away inspired. That's Paul Jacek. You can book with him at www.paul.com. Okay, so I just left you with a big giant judgment. I did a big judgy thing on your friend. What do you think?
Well, here's what's interesting. I don't know that it's moving backward.
Okay.
I think it is seeking comfort.
Okay.
When people, let's talk in our energetic system, in our chakra system. Now, people go, oh, that you can see their eyes kind of glaze over it. And I'm saying, but here's what's interesting. When you feel uncomfortable and you're frightened, your tummy hurts. The world is nothing but energy. We talked about the energetic soup we're all wandering in. So within that sense, and it was one of the reasons I started into theater for a short time. When I walked through the stage door, I knew exactly what was going to go on. There was a script. There was a set. They even told me what to wear. And for an hour and 45 minutes or 2 hours, the length of the show, I knew exactly how it was going to go. So, within this huge shift, we all feel it. Nobody has the script.
Right.
So, within her return, and I'm seeing that with a lot of people, a lot of people have, during this pandemic, because it was such a change, have gained a lot of weight, or they've gone back to smoking, or they have gone back, they think they have relapsed, and in one respect, they have, but it's in order to comfort yourself. But what if? That's why one of the most powerful prayers is that thread-worn serenity prayer, because it asks for the courage to change. And so within that change, I had somebody, and this is my own interpretation, she was pretty convinced that there was an entity in her house. And I said, well, then tell it to leave. And she goes, I can't do that. And I said, well, why? And she goes, well, because they're more powerful. I said, you're the one with the body.
Yeah.
Tell it to leave. And the problem was she had mistaken control for power. When we talk about being very powerful beings, if you're listening to this and you have a body, you're at the top of the food chain, kid. There's all sorts of stuff that's swimming. I mean, 5G alone is threading through your body while you're having carrots. I mean, there's so much going on. So what do you pay attention to? because that's what's important. So when we were at the top of the show, when we were talking about this rise in darkness, darkness is, first of all, it's a liar. It looks like it's more convincing. It looks like it's easier.
Right.
Yeah, and there's really, in one respect, there's no easy.
Well,
there's just the next indicated step.
Yeah, the part I worry about, and it almost seems like there's, like when you say your friend went back, maybe she's a pick and choose Catholic, which is much better. But I get worried, especially, I think the next generation is going to figure this out, but I get worried because they don't want gay people to marry, because they don't want women to whatever. You know what I mean? Like those are the things that I feel like the United States and the world have fought so hard for, and I don't want them to even be in jeopardy again. Even this Muslim ban or the kids at the border, like that's all stuff that I just, how are we still there? Do you know what I mean? And when people go back, like, so your friend, what would your friend say if you asked her about that you weren't allowed to marry, if they had it there?
That is the conversation I would like to ask her, because she's such an LGBTQ advocate.
Yeah.
And the question I will ask is, okay, I want you to be comfortable. And around that, I am a pick and choose Catholic. There's a lot about I have a devotion to the Blessed Mother, because the mother energy is what's going to get us through the loving, compassionate, patient, kind energy is the healing that we need, embodied in what one would call the Mother Mary, or Sophia, or Isis, or all of that. So I want to ask that question, because how do you reconcile that with yourself? She did make a remark I overheard when she was talking with a couple of people. And I love this woman so much, that she was so proud of this church. I believe it was St. Monica's in Santa Monica, that had a special sort of focus group for gay people. And they allowed them to meet once a month, like in the parking lot. And I stopped and I thought, wait, you're thinking that's progress?
Yeah.
Let me just quietly mention to you, it's like you're letting them come in the house, but we'll take your money.
Right.
Because really, let's talk about the cash. That's where we find it. But imagine, because this is a thoughtful, caring, sweet person, the level of fear must have been so intense. What agreement do you make with yourself to find your own personal comfort?
Yeah.
Because the idea of being completely authentic, I think if I were to, God forbid, transition this evening before my Big Mac, it would be that I have been completely who I am. I have been a work in progress for sure, but good, bad, or indifferent, I've made my choices. And that may be the best that this lifetime was to offer, because especially with past life regression, the rise in that psychotherapeutically, I met a psychologist who uses it, doesn't believe in past life at all, but enjoys using the tool because his results go through the ceiling, whether he believes it or not.
Wow.
So if we use that model for a second, just go, if in fact this is an exercise for her to find devotion and being devout about something that then expands to her feeling better, and then that irradiating her like dropping a pebble into the pond, then we're all a work in progress.
Right.
So therefore, then I go, good on you. We're not wearing the same shoes we wore in 7th grade. We're continually outgrowing things, trying something on new. We're all moving, and it really, quite frankly, goes so quickly.
Mm-hmm. And I guess you're right, but it just goes back to that. I don't want to go backwards. I think you're right. Everybody else wants to go backwards to what it was, or or feeling safe in that spot. I don't want to go backwards on something.
Well, and then I say to them, did you like Star Trek? And they go, oh, sure. I said, then that's the paradigm. What about this planet is gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
This playground can't get any more beautiful. If you happen to be, and I happen to be such a fan of courage, if you happen to have an animal, if you go with the Christic perspective, I love when people want to start to argue, and I don't argue. I mean, well, that's not true. I like a feisty discussion, but we're given dominion means we have to take care of the planet, and so it's and these are people who like to talk about being Christian. How people getting congruent between your head and your heart is the journey. Mm-hmm. Watching people get flipped out about wearing a mask and then pulling both masks down to have a cigarette. I'm like, oh, you don't even make sense. I don't know. What are you doing? You're worried about a germ, and yet the gases and tar and nicotine. Okay.
You know what I have to tell you, Paul? If I had 6 months to live, that would be the first thing I would do. I'd go back to that. I understand that addiction. I haven't smoked in like 30 years, but that would be the first thing I would do.
But isn't that good to know?
Yes.
So you can see sort of the correlation of where my dear friend went, I'm going to go back, because that provides her that sort of comfort.
Yeah. Well, so now,
mm-hmm.
so I'm back, sort of back to the darker beings that are here now.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of a question that I'm just starting to wonder. Do you think some people have dark travelers? And I don't necessarily mean it has to be some crazy demonic thing, but do you think some people have dark travelers and it's just their balance? Or
it can be.
Yeah, or there's a way that I just want to say, you know, I don't know if you heard the podcast I did with Diet where she channeled a demon, and it was very, very enlightening, and what their job is in the world and how they are there to bring balance. And it was about learning about yourself, okay? And it was not about just taking a pass and being all good. Being all love and light ain't going to work. You got to see that shadow side. You got to acknowledge it. And now I'm just starting to wonder if some people's shadow side are literally another being.
And I agree with you. What I have been picking up recently, I enjoy meeting people for the first time because I'm flooded with information. Mm-hmm. And I realized the other day, meeting this woman, that she, yes, indeed, had a dark traveler with her. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily dark as in demonic, but certainly there are happier entities to be associated with.
Right.
And it was her mother.
Oh, her mother was that dark?
And because she'd had a terrible childhood, she made Joan Crawford look like Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm.
Oh.
But within her mother passing, the loyalty between those two, whatever agreement they had, she might have dropped her bodysuit, but she was every bit in her daughter's life as she was before.
Now, was she a dark influence, though, or was she a balancing influence?
I would say in this instance, because the daughter is in a place where she would find it disloyal and almost more agonizing than the abuse she suffered by completely removing it entirely.
Got it. Okay, so she was where she wanted to be, in other words.
She would like to complain about it, but she didn't want to do anything about it.
Okay. Yeah.
Which I understand.
And that is what happens sometimes with attachments is people get attached to the thing that's attached to them and they don't want to let it go. And it makes them feel special. It gives them an adrenaline rush when they're scared, and it speaks to them. So
well, and that within that, it is this idea that there's absolute lack in the world, when in fact abundance is natural. In all things, there's always more of whatever you'd like.
Yeah.
So if in fact this, I'm having a paranormal experience, okay, they're kind of, miracles are natural. When they don't occur, something's gone wrong. So there's kind of still that little bit of buzz, watching some of the paranormal shows of these people. I don't know about you, and we've had the great good fortune to work together in one, but standing in a dilapidated home shrieking at ghosts, I'm like, don't scream at me whether I'm alive or dead. Stop doing that.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Don't start a fight with something you can't see. That's my number one rule.
Well, don't you find? Yeah. So, but people are fast. Once again, they're fascinated with the darkness. But within the discipline, that's why they call, we are monks without monasteries. For some of the things that we now take for granted, back in the day, you would have had to have prepared to ask the infinite intelligence into your life.
Yeah.
And now we do it vacuuming. Zoom under the chair. Okay, God, it's all yours. You're with me. We're all good. I mean, it's become sort of commonplace, and yet, do we pay that much attention to it?
Well, it is. It's very informal. It's like, remember when you used to get up for church, and now it's all jeans.
Yeah. Well, and it should be that. It should be a conversation, a lovely, charming conversation. I love the two favorite types of architecture. I love theaters and I love churches because they're the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've never stepped on a stage that I, please God, haven't always thanked them for the opportunity, because that is a sacred space. And honey, I've worked a few clubs that are so dark, so dark. That I've gotten a buzz out of that, because once you realize your connection to the infinite, you walk on sacred ground.
Right. I'm trying to put together a podcast about, because right now I need to up my protection, and I need to switch out of the talk of demons into angels for a little bit. Talk about balance. I got to go the other way for a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I have the greatest therapist in the world. And I started to tell her something, and then I looked at her and she goes, I get all this paranormal stuff. And I was like, lady, I knew you were a psychic and medium when I walked in here.
Yeah.
So she gets all of it. And she talked to me about the 7 layers of protection, which I think I'm going to start doing. I'm going to look at it. And folks, I'm going to do a podcast on it, and I'm probably going to put out a meditation with it, because
Perfect.
I wonder if that's kind of the way we want to walk through, not without our lessons, but protected, because it's not that maybe it's not dark things around us that's as bad as dark things attached to us. That's when you get really bad.
I just heard this, and I share it because it was an aha moment for me around the idea of protection. Because for me to walk through the world and be frightened that at every turn something might leap on me was a little concerning. Mm-hmm. But this woman explained very gently. She said, once you get your balance, if it's in morning meditation, and you feel the connection, and you feel the source of energy just coating you and all over you and lovely. The reason that we use protection then is not from anyone else. It's to protect this sweet energy from any other influence.
Mm-hmm. Then you know who you are. Yep.
Exactly. And so therefore you do walk as a free person through the whole world.
You know what else? Yeah, freedom is what we want. Freedom is what we want. And that's why your phrase about this year, about what are you under the influence of? If you're under the influence of anything, you're not free.
Exactly. Or if you're under the influence, make sure it's, the goodness, the light, I stand, now that I've moved to the beach, I stand at the ocean. I could stand there all day long. I am fascinated by the waves. Mm-hmm. Each one, much like a snowflake, individual. What is this intelligence that's doing that?
Yeah.
And then that intelligence is handling the planet and beating my heart. Get out of town.
Get out of town. It's the best. You know what I did the other day? I was on a phone call with someone, not a reading, with someone else that was being so negative. And I sat here and I pointed a mirror at the phone. And like within seconds, the person changed their tune. Like I reflected it back to them through the phone. And I was like, this isn't going to work through the phone, is it? Holy cow, did it work? It was an excellent. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm going to keep a mirror by my phone at all times now.
That's brilliant.
Yes, a little
Yeah.
little mirror. That's what they should have for the iPhone. You could that's be my app, the reverse mirror app, where you just look at the back of the mirror and it sends energy back to that person. That's a good app. I should make that. All right, you know what, Paul? We started in the middle because I was going to ask you. I was going to say, in fact, I'm going to take a break, and I was going to say how I want to hear your journey. Totally backwards interview. That's why I'm different, folks. I start in the middle. And then I get to the end, and then I go, wait a minute, let's begin now. So when we come back, folks, we're going to find out about how Paul got into being the awesome tarot reading psychic medium that he is.
Psychic teas, spelled with a Z, are scrumptious herbal combinations with antiviral and anti-inflammatory properties. Without sugar or caffeine, psychic teas won't mess with any medications and are designed by a naturopathic doctor. Many testify to positive results. Detox chakras and psychic tea blends enable bodily functions with superior efficacy, while more love and champagne blends support awareness of subtle joy and bliss. The CBD's teas are magical with myriad healing effects. There are 20 servings per package. A little dab'll do ya, and you can drink it hot or cold. Psychic teas taste so good. Replace coffee, use as a bedtime ritual, or even flavor a meal or dessert. The people behind the product are righteous and kind. Psychic teas will blow your mind. Totally worth the investment. Psychic teas with a Z.com.
All right, darling.
Yes.
So, and first of all, you're from Massachusetts, right?
No, I'm from Colorado.
Oh, you're from Colorado. That's right. I know that. So tell us all, how did you find your psychic ability or mediumship? What happened to you when you were young? How did this come about?
From the time I was about a year old till I was about 5, we lived in a wonderful Edwardian 2-story, 9-room house in a little town called Lafayette, Colorado.
Oh my God, 9? How many stories? 3? 2?
2.
Oh, it sounds huge.
It was huge. And my 2 older brothers, they were 14 and 11 years older than I am. So they were in high school when I was little. So, and this is back in the day when moms didn't have to work.
Right.
So I remember I just loved, and I've not been in that house in over 60 years, but it is emblazoned on my mind because there were different pockets through the house that were so much more comfortable for me than others. And I knew that. Now, my room had been a nursery. And I think I was about 3.5 or 4 when I got out of a baby bed into bunk beds, and I was on the lower level. And I remember after my mother, we would read a story and she would tuck me in. And those doors in this house, the house was built in 1909, had a transom window, meaning the window above the door that could be opened for ventilation.
Mm-hmm.
And I could lay there, and once in a great while, it would quietly shut by itself. Now, I was never frightened. I just thought it was sort of interesting. And once in a great while, just before I would drop off to sleep, I was aware that someone else was tucking me in.
I have to just say, I have the cutest visual of you as a little child watching the window shut and being tucked in.
Yeah, that's just so. And I finally said to my mother one time, "Who's the nice lady that tucks me in after you do?" And I remember she was standing at the sink, and she turned around. She goes, "What are you saying?" And I once again, I wasn't afraid. And she goes, "You're dreaming. That doesn't happen." That does. Every kid sometime, or at least in my experience, would walk down the hall, and I would get into bed with my parents and snuggle in between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, on the second floor of this big house, and I would watch their closet door open and shut.
Now, what did they say when that happened? Or they were asleep and then they woke up and said, "Who left the closet open?"
They would say, "Well, this is an old house, and houses settle, and also in the wind. Sometimes the wind causes, And I'm like, oh, okay. But later on, a woman who happened to be the librarian of our town mentioned to me that the house this is years later. I mean, I was in college. That the house was built. It was also the first house in this little town to have electricity in 1909.
Wow,
and
that was an old house.
It was very exciting. And this was also, Lafayette was a coal mining community. Most of the men were coal miners. But this family had a few dollars and built this beautiful house with spider web windows and curlicue arches and oak pillars. It was just gorgeous. She said, the family that lived there, and now this is sort of topical, they lost their daughter in the Spanish flu epidemic. So the lady is checking on you because that's where her daughter passed away. She's checking on you. The mom is checking on you to make sure you're okay.
Wow.
That was my first, and how I thought, isn't that strange that I wasn't afraid. It just seemed to be, because it was not coming in fear. It wasn't trying to, suck my soul or scare me. She was coming from a place of love, certainly.
That's even something that we're finding with a lot of like fae and a lot of jinn. They like kids, so kids don't have to be afraid of them or aren't afraid of them because they like them.
Right. And it's a yes and. So we moved out into the country. My dad finished off a home, and now I'm living in the middle of like almost 4 acres and 7 miles from town. So my mother would say, get out and get some vitamin D, meaning go out and play outside and play until the sun comes down. So I was running fields, watching bunnies, seeing foxes, and I was an avid reader. So I liked mystery stories. So when I was introduced to becoming, they would call it catechism in the Roman Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. I remember, I also got in trouble in Vacation Bible School at the Lutheran Church because they were talking about the Garden of Eden. And I went, wait. So if God is everywhere present in this loving experience, and he comes into the garden going, Adam, why doesn't he know where Adam is? And I got in such trouble. You sit in the hallway until you can be respectful. I'm like, I think I'm out.
Question.
I think I'm out.
Ask him about Adam's first wife, Lilith, huh? Nobody wants to talk about her.
Yeah, well, that's what so I was very confused. I knew what I knew in my, get all the way to high school, and a dear friend of mine, and we're still friends today, she brought out a deck of tarot cards to study hall. Now, we should have been studying, but I remember as she turned them over, the imagery was fascinating. And I thought, I'm in. How do we do this? And then we got all witchy and gothic and fabulous. and I was finding more nourishment than going to church. So I began my study. My grandmother, now my father's mother, was a big old Kansas farm woman. I don't think she ever finished the 5th grade, but she was so in touch because she considered the almanac her Bible.
Wow, the Farmer's Almanac, really?
Which,
by the way, is still really good.
It's still, because she planned her haircuts according to the phase of the moon. She planned planting her garden, and she taught me psychometry.
Wow.
We would sit there, and she would hand me something, and she'd say, tell me a story, Polly. So I would just start making up stories. It was good for my imagination. I didn't know I was getting information from whatever she handed me.
Wow.
And then she taught me how to dowse. We would find 2 really good sticks, and I'd walk next to her holding these sticks, because she said, if you're ever lost in the mountains, because I grew up near Colorado, and, we sort of planned for that. I also know if I'm ever caught in an avalanche, once the moving stops, you know what the first thing you do is?
What?
You spit.
Spit?
You spit, because if you spit, natural gravity will show you if you're caught in it, whether you are upside down or right side up.
So you spit and it'll go down.
It depends on how you rested after the tumbling.
Otherwise, it'll go down on you.
Right. So if you're upright or down. So that was something she taught me about. So if you're ever lost, you can find water.
With the sticks?
Yeah, with dowsing, the 2 sticks will move and they'll cross in front of you if there's a source of water under the ground.
Wow. Oh, so I thought they had to be metal. Why do we use metal now? It can be sticks?
Well, it can be sticks. Sticks are a little thicker and it takes a little longer. Metal moves much easier, especially in psychometry. So if somebody hands me a piece of jewelry, I will certainly pick up impressions quicker than if you hand me like a childhood block.
Right. Got it. Okay.
It's just what holds the vibration. So that was my beginning. Then I would go on to when I became an actor, I would ask the infinite if they would help me not only memorize, I've always had a belief in something larger. And trust me, once I became a stand-up comic, I rely on it because you walk in. Here's also the deal that I think my sensitivity was higher. Being a little sissy gay kid, I had to check and see where it was safe for me. I got beat up frequently. I got tied to tetherball poles. I was locked in lockers. I had my glasses taken off my face and broken.
Ugh.
And the shame that went with that, my mother would say, "Did you break your glasses again?" And I wouldn't tell her that I'd been beaten in passing period again. Because a couple of times she said, "Well, why don't you stand up for yourself?" When there's four of them, what do you do?
Right.
Here's the deal. If I didn't have such a belief that something was going to change or there was a power protecting me, I would have been one of the guys going, "Guess what? I have my father's shotgun. We're going to clean this up."
Right.
So I say all that to say this. My sensitivity was very high. So by the time I really, really believed it when in 1980, I can't believe it was 40 years ago, I became a Queen Mary tour guide here in Long Beach. And then there was a no kidding, almost daily experience of being in a haunted house.
Mm-hmm.
I worked in 3 incredibly haunted places. I worked at the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado.
I'm sorry. Did the spirits on the Queen Mary, which usually they're pretty friendly, am I right?
Well, that's where I learned the difference between a vortex, an imprint, and ghosts. Because she's stuffed all 12 decks. I mean, there's shit moving on all the time.
Right. And by so there's your residual, which is your imprint, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then the intelligent, which you said is your what did you had 3 different words than I usually use.
Well, ghosts don't know they're dead.
Mm-hmm. Most of them. Yeah.
Most of them. Yeah. Some just want to be a pain in the ass. And then like the vortex, it's just a weird, because her hull is iron and steel. So it's holding 31 years of at sea service. And then she's been in Long Beach longer than she sailed. So there's all of those, proms from 1970 going on. I mean, there's a lot of more added to it. But there's a lady on A deck on the starboard side. We had several hotel guests come jittery to the front desk going, there's in the hallway. And what it is they see an older woman and she's holding onto the railing and she's obviously in distress. She's in a black dress and the closer they get, she fades. Why that is it was an elderly passenger. She's making her way to the doctor's cabin. She's having a heart attack.
Oh, she must have died there, huh?
And she didn't get to his cabin.
Wow.
So she still hangs out there. When I worked there, we were not allowed really to talk about all of the paranormal stuff that was going on. And now they use it as a marketing tool. So there you go.
Right. Right.
But that's where it really was like going to Ghost College. And then when I started working at the Comedy Store, I was doing sets at night, but then I became the receptionist during the day. So I was spending 12 to 15 hours a day, in there. And it's such an ominous place,
Right.
I wouldn't, the basement, no thanks, not at all. Oh no, that's where the enforcers, because the mafia did a lot of agreements, and downstairs is where it was enforced.
Yes. And and it's amazing. Somebody once said to me, comedy clubs just seem like places like there's bad words painted all over them, like they have bad energy. And they actually kind of do. Do you know what I mean? As much as they're a place of laughter, they're very much a place of darkness.
Well, the types of laughter, people, when they're startled, they'll giggle.
Yeah.
It's also a release of emotion, and comics, God bless them. I adore stand-up comics, but we are out of our minds generally and emotionally retarded. That's what's so interesting on stage, people's maladjustment. Let's have a cocktail and watch somebody fall apart, especially when I'm really out of my mind. A friend of mine said, "Oh my God, you don't need a therapist. You need a microphone. This is gold."
Well, it's funny because I think it's one of two. It's either out of their mind or more in touch.
Well, I think it's, I agree. I think you go on that journey.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, exactly.
So, and that brings me to, floundering around today. It's funny. I was one of the last times I was in a shopping mall, and it was in the South Bay Galleria down here, and I was just bebopping in, and it caught me by surprise. I turned a corner and ran into some of the darkest energy I think I've ever met, and I just stood there going, "Absolutely not."
See, it's right here. It's right here now.
And I was like, "Oh, you almost caught me on the drop, dude." Because the veil was thin, and now
It's gone.
they are there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right here. So within the idea of protection, I tell all my clients and everybody, morning meditation, get a hold of yourself.
Yeah, what's funny too about that? There's an evolution in how we protect ourselves too, and
Yes.
I think it's where it used to be like a bubble, and now it's going to become armor. And I believe that I said this in my New Year's thing that empaths have been given armor; they just have to know how to use it now.
Indeed.
And yeah, that's coming up. So you grew up in that house, and then how did you get? How did you get to like I'm going to do this as a job?
Well, I started reading for friends, and I was doing it so much more as a kick. And then, much like our interchange, I had a dear friend of mine who actually sat and helped me really refine tarot. She was a tarot reader. And then she said, "You know what? I work on a tarot line. Would you come?" And I said, "Sure." And I worked on 2 psychic lines in the late 80s and early 90s. And once again, it was like going to a gym, working out.
Right. Yeah.
So I began to recognize it. And then the game changed, because it wasn't so much my ability, because this was a business. It was, how long can I keep you on the phone?
Right.
Because we were charging them $3.99 a minute, and I was seeing 39 cents a minute.
Yeah. And you know what else that I believe, I know people that work on a couple of them. I think they finally fixed that. In fact, I wonder if there's a law that's passed. Because
I think, well, it certainly did change. Absolutely.
Because a long time ago, it was quite a while ago, I worked for one, and if the people wanted to like extend, they literally had to put their credit card in again. So they kind of made it a pain in the butt so that you couldn't keep them on the line. So there would be a moment, also a moment where they could hang up on you if they wanted.
Yes.
So
yes.
So that's way better now. Yeah, and the pay is way better now. But it was awful back then.
Oh, it was just because, and here's my joke from my act, because they're sort of intertwined. In order to be able to pump minutes, I quickly went to who in your family drinks, and tell me about your mother. And then my payday was certainly more exciting. But when I started to fly for a living, I flew for Frontier Airlines. There was a little metaphysical store in Boulder, Colorado. This was 1997. That they were looking for a reader. So they had a little reading room. And so on my days off, it wasn't very far from where my folks lived. I would go in, and I had a huge response. In fact, I still have some of those clients today.
Wow. That's even an interesting thing. They were looking for a reader. Now I think places have so many readers and so many people that want to get hired. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, in fact, the place was called Land of Lorien from The Hobbit.
Oh.
It was so cute. And they had artist had painted this marvelous tree that ran across the top of it. It had beautiful floor-to-ceiling windows that looked to the Rocky Mountains. It was gorgeous. Now, later on, I would be the assistant to the executive producer in DVD production for Lord of the Rings.
Wow. That's amazing.
Isn't that fun? I love when the other side winks at you.
I know. That's so funny. So, Paul, now tell everybody what you're doing now. You're doing readings from home, right?
Yes, indeed. And I have a website that I'm tinkering with, but they can certainly find me at pauljacek.com. And I also have a Paul Jacek Tarot Reader page on Facebook. And I also am associated with Liberate Emporium, a lovely metaphysical store in Los Feliz here in Los Angeles. But we're not doing face-to-face readings there, but you can find me there as well.
Right. Okay. So, and where everybody finds you at your website, right?
Yes, pauljacek.com.
Wonderful. Got anything else? Exciting stuff coming up, Paul?
I'm doing, for the first time, I'm doing a face-to-face stand-up. I know we're recording this in January, but I'm so excited. It's in a park in Simi Valley.
I love that.
So,
That's where it has to be. Is it? I've done the parking lot shows. Are people in their cars or are they out of their cars?
I think they're out of their cars, but I'm looking forward to that. We are returning to. I hated the word social distancing. I think it was physical distancing because I know with technology, I've been more in touch with some people. I'm so fortunate. I'm still good friends with 3 people I went to preschool with.
Okay.
And,
wow.
now that they're grandparents and all of that. And in fact, where I am in my journey and my story is I've moved to Long Beach and I'm living literally 5 blocks from where I lived in 1980.
Wow. Wow.
And it's so much fun. I wake up like a kid getting ready to go to a field trip. And I had some disco on the other day in my bathroom and it was just gorgeous. And I stepped out of the shower. I was so happy and I turned and caught my reflection and went, that can't be accurate.
That's not how I feel.
Because last time I had feathered hair, puka shells, and little white satin shorts. And I'm looking at the captain from Titanic. What happened?
That's so funny. I met online. I met this guy, he's very, very handsome. He's very handsome. And I said, "Where are you from?" And he says, "Iran," which is like, of course, that's why I'm like, oh, I could see that because I love I love Persian men. And I said, "Oh, I should have guessed. Persian men are always so handsome." And then he says, "Oh, I'm not very handsome." And I was like, I can see in these pictures, And he goes, I go, "Well, if that's what you really believe, we need to get you a new mirror because this one is lying to you." And he came back and said, "What am I, Snow White's mother?" And then I was like, "Yeah, I don't think I'm that interested anymore."
Yeah, oops. Wow. Feel that? The moment passed.
Yes.
Right by.
Right by. Exactly. That's how, I'm allowed to be picky now. Paul, it's so great to talk to you. I can't believe this is the first time you've been on.
I know. Well, and I invite you to my little beach bungalow. Let's come down and have ceremony, maybe a moon ceremony at the beach. Oh, it'd be so much fun.
Absolutely. And we still have to do a reading exchange.
Let's do it.
Awesome. All right, everybody. That is Paul Jacek. Please call him for a reading. He is fantastic. You heard him on my New Year's episode, and now you know. And I apologize, Paul, for starting out so I just was in that what's going on with the darkness thing.
Well, here's what's interesting. I thank you and I credit you. First of all, I'm so pleased with our friendship. Second of all, I'm such a fan of yours. But you turned to me one time backstage and you go, "Why aren't you doing this?" And it was because of your nudge that I went over to Liberate Emporium and got that job.
Oh.
It was because of you. I have a career because of you.
Oh, you don't. I was just, what if I probably wasn't even talking about that. No, I'm just kidding.
Why aren't you doing this?
I was talking about the buffet. Why don't you just do that? Why did you know? Oh, Paul, you're wonderful. You would have been led back with or without me, but I appreciate the compliment.
No worries, my dear.
All right, everybody. That is Paul Jacek. His website is in the show notes. And thanks to Mike at Uno Rising Meeting. Thank you again, Paul.
Thank you, my dear.
All right, you guys. We'll see
Bye-bye.
you next week.